Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this press conference. We've got some wonderful news to share from government. The Premier is going to start off reading a statement, and then we'll open up for questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be able to hold this press conference this afternoon, and I have with me the Deputy Governor, Honorable Francis Madison, and the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Development, Marco Archer. And as you might have presumed, we want to talk about government accounts. Over the course of the past 7 or so years, there's been much justified criticism about the failure of the Cayman Islands government to comply with the Public Management and Finance Law with respect to its accounts. Today, I'm happy to announce that finally there is some good news from the Auditor General about the progress that this administration is making on getting our accounting system up to scratch. 3 ministries under the progressive-led administration have received favorable and complimentary words from the Auditor General recently. The portfolio of the civil service has received an unqualified opinion with respect to its financial statements. But perhaps most notably, for the first time since the Public Management and Finance Law came into effect in 2004, the 2013-2014 financial statements for the Ministry of Community Affairs have been signed by the Auditor General with an unqualified opinion and within the statutory deadline. Additionally, financial statements for the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport have received a qualified opinion from the Auditor General. The Auditor General has said, and I quote from his email, "This is the first time that a ministry responsible for tourism or district administration has not received an adverse opinion or disclaimer of opinion since the introduction of the Public Management and Finance Law, which is a notable step forward in accountability and is something which deserves to be marked," unquote. An unqualified opinion can be likened to a clean slate. In audit parlance, it means that the auditors believe the financial statements are sound and factual and can be relied upon. Government agencies are required to submit financial statements to the Auditor General by the 31st of August each year. An email to the Deputy Governor from the Auditor General sent on Saturday, 1st of November last, informed him that by the end of the day of 31st of October, the Auditor General's office had achieved the sign-off of 23 out of the potential 42 entity financial statements for the budget year ending the 30th of June 2014. Obviously, we still have a ways to go, but in the words of the Auditor General, this is the best result that has been achieved since the introduction of the Public Management and Finance Law. While we appreciate that government still has a lot to do when it comes to submitting financials in a timely manner and getting them right the first time, I honestly believe this administration is setting the right tone. I wish to commend the men and women in the civil service who have spent many hours striving to get our financial statements and reporting up to par. I first wish to commend and thank the Chief Officer in the Ministry of the Portfolio of the Civil Service, not the Ministry, the Portfolio of the Civil Service, Mrs. Gloria Nixon, and her Chief Financial Officer and their team. The Chief Financial Officer is Nadisha Walters, who's here with us, for their efforts. And I especially want to thank and praise Chief Financial Officer Stephanie Azan and her team in my own Ministry of Community Affairs for their significant achievement of getting it right the first time and on time. And I would also wish to commend Chief Financial Officer Nika Webster in the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport, and her team, as well as the Chief Officer, for their efforts and achievements. I have to say, I am seeing a new attitude of cooperation and responsiveness in government as it works with the Auditor General's office, and I do appreciate it. This is not by chance, but by design. This government is working tirelessly ever since we were returned to office to restore stability to the country and to government finances and to the economy. A large part of that work has been overseen and ushered through by Minister of Finance, Honorable Marco Archer, and I again wish to publicly commend him and his very capable team for the infectious zeal they bring to their government duties. We will continue to move forward and strive for improvement, but I think we should celebrate the improvements that have been made in the accountability for the use of public resources. I again wish to thank my staff and all of those in government who have worked to bring us these accolades. It proves we are more than capable of being good stewards of the government the people has entrusted to us. I believe the Deputy Governor would like to say a few words, and following that, we're quite happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Premier. Obviously, as head of the civil service, this is a very proud moment for us and for me and for the chief officers and their CFOs. We have come a long way. I was talking to the Auditor General this morning, and he reminded me that back in 2010, we were able to submit only 15 out of 38 financials to his office on time. And even by the 9th of December, some 3 months later, there were still 12 submissions outstanding. So if we fast forward until present time, this year we submitted all our financials on time, and it's my very bold prediction that when the Auditor General finishes his work, not one single entity in government would have received a disclaimer or adverse opinion. That is, in my estimation, a remarkable level of achievement in a very short period of time. As the Premier said, it hasn't happened by accident. The public has demanded accountability, better performance, and you're seeing that in action now. I've been holding chief officers accountable. They've been holding their CFOs accountable, and you're seeing their results. Minister Archer has worked, and his team, Financial Secretary, and everyone has worked very closely with us to make this all happen. It's a great team effort. It bodes well with what the Premier says in terms of one government, but it's a very proud moment for us in the civil service. And I want to join the Premier in thanking Ms. Doreen Whitaker and Ms. Azan and Ms. Nadisha, everyone, Ms. Gloria McField-Nixon, Strand Borden and his team, Ms. Webster. This has been an amazing achievement for us. When we get the rest of the good news, we want you to report it, because there's more good news to come when the Auditor General finishes his work. So I want to record my thanks to everyone for all their hard work and commitment. It is certainly, I hope the public will see that we are doing things better and that we are not standing still and achieving the results that they deserve. Thank you.
I just should add before we take questions that I think we both failed to mention the efforts of the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Community Affairs, Ms. Doreen Whitaker, who's also here. Because leadership, it's about leadership in the end. It's all about leadership. So any questions? Any questions, those I can't answer? The really difficult ones, I'll pass to Minister Archer. All the other ones I'll take. Ms. Carsley.
Trouble with Kenny. Just to clarify, it was unqualified for the community affairs and qualified for tourism, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just for the average listener, what's the difference between unqualified and qualified as opposed to getting a disclaimer as well? So why is this good news for the average person?
Well, I'll risk answering that. Ms. Archer can correct me. I'll risk answering that, not being an accountant myself. But there's a range of opinions that the Auditor General can give. The worst is obviously a complete disclaimer, in which he says, perhaps that's not even the worst. The worst is an adverse opinion, in which he actually comments adversely on the quality of the work. And then there's a disclaimer in which he says, well, I can't offer any opinion with respect to this because there aren't enough details or they aren't put together properly. And then there's a qualified opinion in which he in other words, makes certain reservations, saying, well, I don't have sufficient information about the value of the assets that are set in the financial statement. That's what usually happens with government accounts in these days because of the delay in having a proper inventory of government assets. or you can get an unqualified opinion in which he says, I'm satisfied as the accuracy of these financial statements, and I think they are of sufficient quality that they can be relied upon without reservation. So in terms of the various possible opinions, unqualified is the best you can get, followed by a qualified, followed by the
Unqualified, followed by qualified, and
unqualified, followed by qualified, followed by disclaimer, followed by adverse opinion. It's always a risk when I try to answer these things not being accounted, but I do understand.
I haven't seen the report, so I don't know. Could you talk about why the Ministry of Tourism got a qualified report? Or just
No, I haven't gone into that level of detail. But what I think one must focus on is that this is the first time since 2004 that a ministry which had responsibility for district administration or tourism was not the subject of either disclaimer or an adverse opinion. So it's a huge step up.
Mr. Premier, can you just say that again? Because I think I must have misheard what you said at the very beginning. Can you read that paragraph slowly? I think everybody's probably in agreement. Because you said 3 ministries, and then you spoke about the portfolio.
Yeah. The portfolio of the
just-
civil service has an unqualified opinion, but it's not the first time for the portfolio of the civil service. So that's not the biggest news. It's great news, but it's not the biggest news. The biggest news is that we for the first time, we have the Ministry of Community Affairs with an unqualified opinion, followed by we have district administration, tourism, tourism, and transport. For the first time since the advent of the public management and finance law, actually receiving something other than a disclaimer or an adverse opinion. They have a qualified opinion with respect to those 2 subjects within the ministry. The reason I framed it like that is because obviously the title of the ministries change from time to time, but the subjects remain the same. So it's the first time since 2004 that we have tourism, the subject of tourism, and district administration not being the subject of either an adverse opinion or a disclaimer.
Okay, before I hand the mic back to Wendy, just for edification purposes, at the end of the day, the Ministry of Community Affairs came first because I got an unqualified opinion. Is that correct to say that? The rest got qualified
Well,
opinions.
Well, the portfolio of the civil service has another unqualified
Unqualified.
opinion, but they've had that before.
In
so-
terms of the 3 ministries that you named, the unqualified opinion went to Ministry of Community Affairs
And portfolio of civil service as
and
well.
Portfolio of Civil
But
Service.
the newsworthy bit is that this is the first time that the Ministry of Community Affairs has had an unqualified opinion since the advent of the public management and finance law.
2004.
Okay, just let me get this straight. What about so of all of the ministries, so for example, what about Ministry of Education? What's that got?
We haven't had a report on that yet.
Okay, so what you're saying is what the Auditor General has completed so far. So the Auditor General has completed almost half of all of the stuff that's submitted. We don't know what the Ministry of Finance has got then.
not as yet.
Not as yet. So all we know, because what I'm struggling with is the Community of Home Affairs never existed. So that's an amalgamation of the internal affairs and
No.
bits of the old.
No, they're 2 separate ministries. There's the Ministry of Community Affairs
Right.
and the Ministry of Home Affairs.
And which one has got the unqualified opinion?
The Community Affairs.
Which was a part of what ministry before the health?
No. No, I mean, under previous administration, community affairs was a lot with itself by itself. So remember, Minister Adams from the previous administration ran that ministry.
So that was community affairs and gender.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then before that, when it was Mr.
Yeah.
Anthony Edens, it was health. Am I correct? Right.
Yeah.
So in
So-
all of that time, it never had.
Right.
Okay.
So the focus needs to be on the subjects because the subjects move around depending on which administration is in,
Yeah.
right? But the departments stay the same,
Right.
right?
So in other words, the Department of Community Affairs has got a clean bill of health for the first time. and the Department of Tourism has nearly got a clean bill of health for the first
Well,
time. That's what
yeah,
this news
but,
is.
but it's really not the department. It's because the ministry.
The ministerial
Yeah, it's the
Yeah, I
it's
get
the
you.
ministry
No,
and the
I get it
department
now.
all the way down.
I get you.
right?
Yeah.
It's the subject.
Okay, so just to be clear, nobody's seen any reports yet. Is that correct?
They'll be tabled in the LA shortly.
Right. So the plan is that when the House meets on the 26th, which is I think next week Wednesday, we will table these these reports.
Reports that you haven't seen yet. Have you seen
It
them?
does it doesn't matter if I see them. It doesn't matter what I think. It's what the Auditor General thinks.
Okay.
Premier,
Okay,
if
so
I
the
may.
Auditor General will.
Yes.
But Tammy, just to answer your question, each ministry would have prepared their reports and sent them on to the Auditor General. So they have seen them. What they have not seen is the Auditor General's opinion. So
Right.
Basically, this is based off of an email sent to the Deputy Governor saying, all right, this is where you've done well and kudos to you.
No, the Auditor General has actually gone further. He's written to the chief officers, commending their work, and saying that this is, as I mentioned in the quote that I read from him, this is worth marking because it is a huge stride in what has been a really, really long journey, and in most instances, all of the news has been bad, and so we have taken the step. The Deputy Governor and myself and the Minister of Finance said, there's been so much bad news about all of this, justifiably so as well, even quite recently. These are significant achievements on the part of a number of ministries, and it is worth us telling the country about them, because really the lack of proper accounts is something that has haunted at least 3 administrations now, and it is about time that we are able to say we are starting to get it right. As Minister Archer said when he spoke, I think it was yesterday, at the Professional Development seminar, we are not near the end of the journey. There's a lot more work to be done, but this is really positive news that it is worth us talking about, to give all in the country and those who have an interest in Cayman confidence that this administration is finally starting to sort out what has been a bugbear for the best part of a decade now.
Mr. Premier, actually, it might be Mr. Archer that will answer this better. Does this bode well then for us actually finally getting a consolidated set of government accounts in the right year, at the right time, to fit, so that people will know before the next budget whether the money that is, so the LA, more importantly even than the people, will know that the money they allocated for that year, before they allocate the next budget, they will be informed by a consolidated account. So are we looking at the 2014-15 budget being done on the back of a consolidated set of accounts for 2013-14? Am I right?
actually,
Yes.
I see what I get what you're trying to ask, Wendy, but we're into the current fiscal year of 14-15, so we've already done the 14-15 budget. The 14-15 budget would have been done and passed through the Legislative Assembly before the end of the 13-14 fiscal year. It has to happen that way by law. So you wouldn't get precisely. So the 13-14, and with these improvements, because what happens with respect to consolidated or entire public sector financial statements, depending on the materiality of a particular ministry or agency, if everything else is going just fine, and everyone else has done well, if a significant ministry or portfolio, whatever, receives an adverse opinion, disclaimer, an unqualified opinion for whatever reason, it could then impact the overall opinion of the entire public sector financial statements. So with these statements, the individual agencies improving, it then reduces the amount of work and improves the chances of the entire public sector or the consolidated statements progressing towards either a qualified opinion or an unqualified opinion. But there may be some issues that may take some more time to iron out before it would get to a stage where the entire public sector would receive an unqualified opinion.
It's not so much the opinion that I was trying to get at, it's the actual appearance and publication of that document so that people
Okay.
can read it and understand what it means in comparison to the budget for that year. So they
Right.
can get their, if they were so inclined, can get their appropriations document out, as people
compared it
want
to.
to do, I'm sure, on of a Saturday
Sure.
evening, and look through that and then look through the ESP and see.
Right. Okay. So
You didn't tell the truth, you told the truth. You know
Right.
what I mean?
follow you. So you wouldn't sure, you wouldn't get that for successive budget cycles. So you wouldn't get the 14-15 you wouldn't get the 13-14 audit opinion before the commencement of the 14-15 fiscal year, but you could get the 13-14 audit opinion before the commencement of the 15-16 fiscal year. Follow me? And that's just because of the way the law is written, that you must have the appropriations passed through the Legislative Assembly for the coming fiscal year before the end of the current fiscal year.
I think the bit that really bears emphasis, though, is the quality of statements. It's not just a matter of, you know, throwing numbers together and on a piece of paper and saying these are the financial statements. That's what has caused the Auditor General in the past to disclaim accounts or to offer adverse opinions. I think the focus needs to be on the quality, the increase in quality of the work that is being done, which is what has caused the Auditor General to deliver unqualified opinions with respect to two of them and qualified with respect to the other, and to have taken the time himself to actually write and say, you know, this is a huge stride forward. Because it's not just a matter of having consolidated accounts, it's the quality of the information that is in there. That is the whole point of the exercise, that you can actually rely on it.
I'd just like to add that since taking office last year, I made it quite clear to the Ministry of Finance that we were going to do all that we could to ensure that the financial statements, both for the Ministry of Finance and across the entire public sector, were at a level where the country could be proud and could accept what was presented. And we meet with chief officers and chief financial officers approximately 2 or 3 times a year. And I recall that in several of those meetings, I made it quite clear we have all of the available resources that we need. We have an army of accountants, qualified accountants. We just needed to ensure that we did all that was necessary to produce these accounts that were at a level where we could get an unqualified opinion or even a qualified opinion. And I'm happy to say that, you know, they have been doing extremely well, as the Auditor General has said in recent weeks. So I expect that now that they have demonstrated their ability to do what is necessary, that we will see a continuation of the improvements from year to year, because it is only by doing that that you then instill a culture of excellence and demonstrate that even though they are paid well and they want to do an excellent job, they also have the ability to do an excellent job, and therefore satisfy the public that their money is being well spent and it can be accounted for. So I'm happy to say that they have been doing what has been asked of them.
If I could just back up for a second, gentlemen. I may not have these numbers exactly right, but I think there's something like 25 statutory authorities and government companies, and then 12 ministries, portfolios, and departments, somewhere around there. These results are for 3 of them?
16.
16? Okay. These results are for 3 of them.
Thus far.
The results for the other 38 are not in yet, or at least you haven't been informed about them from the
Right.
Auditor General's office?
Right.
Okay. But Mr. Manderson, you said that you think that all of them will get qualified, at least qualified or unqualified opinions. Was that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Why do you think that? Have you had some indication from the Auditor
Well,
General?
Yeah, I mean, we have seen the improvement. We have, and I have great confidence in our team. So the other ministry that was, I mean, remember there was a headline that a few weeks ago that we couldn't account for $1 billion.
Mm.
That's going to be a thing of the past. The two ministries that received those opinions were tourism and the district, the Ministry of Planning. We have now seen the big turnaround in the Ministry of Tourism, and I have no doubt that the Ministry of Planning will make the same turnaround. So their accounts, I think, are now being dealt with by the Auditor General, but I have great confidence in the team that we have there, and that they will do the same outstanding work.
And are you all going to announce it every time we get those opinions back, or are we going to wait now until they're all done?
Well,
It's okay if you do.
we think this is newsworthy. I hope you do too,
Yeah.
because it's such a shift from where we were, and it follows hard on the heels of those sorts of headlines that the Deputy Governor just spoke about.
Okay, so with the realization that this is the first time that tourism and district administration have been given anything other than a disclaimer, adverse opinion, there's still some issues with their financial statements. Did the Auditor General give any indication of what those were? I mean, was it just the asset valuations, or do we know what was wrong with them?
I don't know. I haven't. What I've had the benefit of is the Auditor General's email.
Okay.
So
And this is not you all releasing the reports. I mean, that's
no,
this
we're gonna lay the reports on the table of the House on Wednesday.
Okay, so there's
Right.
no. It's not this. This is not meant to sound silly, but there's no illegality or something of releasing the results or.
No,
something that-
we've talked to the Auditor General extensively about this.
Okay.
Brett, just to answer your question earlier, bearing in mind now that the District of Administration, Tourism and Transport is a combination of what used to be the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport is a combination of what used to be the Ministry of Tourism, Finance and Economic. Yes, thank you, and the District of Administration, Works, Lands and Agriculture, right? So any disclaimer and any points that would create a disclaimer or an adverse opinion from that ministry in previous fiscal years that were not cleared up and then brought into the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport might also impact the ability of that ministry to achieve an unqualified opinion. So everything could be perfectly well in one area, but just one minor point from a previous, not a minor point, but a material point from a previous ministry brought over could impact it. So if you think of what I'm saying, a simple case, I'd say District Administration, Works, Lands and Agriculture. If there was a inability to give an assurance as to the accuracy or completeness of the revenue for District Administration, Works, Lands and Agriculture, when you bring that over into tourism, if that issue hadn't been resolved, well then of course revenue being a significant point would then prevent tourism from achieving an overall unqualified opinion.
Again, I think it's probably Mr. Archer, sorry. The issue that the Auditor General has highlighted often is the lack of information to support the accounts, which obviously boils down to record keeping. So if the record keeping has been straightened out, in theory, each year goes on, you're going to be improving the accounts for that year. But how are you addressing the stuff like you're just talking about now, the material points that are constantly dragged over? So you say in 2008, you didn't have information for a big wad of money. In 2009, that wad of money gets, I mean, are those problems continuing to carry all the way through? Or are you able, as accountants, I don't know how you do because I'm not an accountant, I don't know, are you able to address that? We can see that record keeping, improved record keeping is going to help. But what about the stuff that we've seen now historically where literally money is missing or at least evidence of how money was spent is missing? So how is it carrying over or are you able to sort it the following year?
It's a combination of issues, and some issues you can resolve within one particular fiscal year. Other issues will take some time to do. As I mentioned yesterday in my speech, that we have to be realistic in what we can achieve within the medium to short term, because some issues may require implementation of new IT systems of the sort. And of course, we will recognize that they aren't necessarily always cheap. So an issue may be the revenue systems in one area. You can identify, or the ministry may be comfortable with the revenue that they're collecting, but they can't attest to that being accurate because of the integration between the systems. Not all agencies within the public service use all the same systems. Some of them aren't all integrated, so sometimes information may come over in one format as opposed to another. So issues of that sort can impact the question that, will impact the situation that you're referring to.
So the point that Minister Archer has made yesterday, and we've made a number of times this afternoon, which I wish to emphasize again, is that what we are announcing today are what we believe are or is evidence of significant improvements. None of us sitting here, or indeed in the government as a whole, believe that we are going to fix this problem overnight. But we've adopted a range of measures, and I suppose a completely different philosophy as it comes to the culture of governance. And that is the overarching theme, really, is a better culture of governance. So we've made great strides, and I think even our detractors realize that in terms of stabilizing government finances and putting us in a position where the government and the country no longer have to be waiting with bated breath as to what the next announcement is going to be, what the next cut is going to be, and so forth and so on. But unless we understand that, unless we underpin all of that with proper financial accountability, that most of that will be for naught. And so we're taking a number of measures, and you'll see some of these being introduced over the course of the next couple of years. I think one of the most significant ones that we hope that we're on the cusp of dealing with is the whole issue of the statutory authorities and government-owned companies, and the need for a public authorities bill to bring all of those under the purview of the government, and so that we have common standards with respect to accounting, with respect to employment, with respect to a whole range of things, rather than this somewhat ad hoc system that is in place now. So it's all about trying to improve the overall system of governance for these islands, so that there is predictability and accountability in everything that government does.
Mr. Premier mentioned just one thing there about the statutory authorities bill. You said that the common standards would be made with respect to employment. Are the employees in the statutory authorities and government companies going to then become civil servants under this new bill?
Well, they're all public servants now. They'll continue to be employed by the statutory authorities. It's just that one of the ways that the government is going to get greater control over what they do is by passing this piece of legislation, which will give cabinet, a greater discretion and ability to deal with statutory authorities, and as I said, to try to get some commonality on employment practices, on accounting practices, and so forth, rather than this ad hoc system that is in place now.
Sure, but I mean, some of the statutory authorities or government companies, I'm not thinking of an example now, but like they're not on government contracts. They get work permits. Their health care is done through elsewhere than Cineco. I mean, is that all going to change?
The bit about Cineco, yes, for sure. Yeah, so commonality in those things as well. But they're still public servants, but they're not employed by central government, so they won't be civil servants in the same word, but they'll be subject to a common set of practices, whether it's employment, whether it's healthcare, pensions, that sort of stuff. We need to reach a point where there isn't all of this difference in the systems.
For example, recruitment. We have a very clear guidelines in the public service management law about how we conduct recruitment. There's no such standardization across the public service, and that's what the Premier is alluding to, is that there needs to be standards so that, you know, when you apply to a particular government company, how they deal with you is standard across the entire public service.
Sure. Okay. But what the Premier just said also was you're going to take all these people and put them under Cineco? Or did I get that
Well,
wrong?
I think those are your words, not mine.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, the issue about health care and health insurance is a major issue for us, because when you have statutory authorities going out there and negotiating health insurance contracts with companies other than Cineco, who do you think in the end winds up paying for all of that?
Brent, the crux of it is that at the end of the day, the government financials, the consolidated statements, entire public sector, they all reflect the financial affairs, be it a deficit or a surplus or a profit or a loss of the statutory authorities, government-owned companies. So our intention is to ensure that there's sufficient understanding and I don't want to use the word control, but there's a good enough relationship between central government and SAGCs to ensure that they are operating as efficiently as they can. And that would, of course, involve some personnel matters. If you think that many of them operate as monopolies, therefore, it is not in their own. It is better that we provide a mechanism or a framework within which they can operate, as opposed to leaving them to do as they have been doing. Because if you are a monopoly, you're going to make a profit regardless or not. We need to ensure that they are operating efficiently and therefore thereby reducing overall cost of running government. And some of those issues, of course, would include the personnel matters that the Premier and the Deputy Governor just mentioned.
Are there any more questions? Okay, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.